The power's been out for days. The streets are quiet, too quiet. Then comes a knock at the door, and it's your neighbor. In that moment, you have to decide, do you open up, turn them away, or are they already part of your plan? Your choice could make or break your survival. Hey preppers, welcome back to the channel. What I just described isn't some far-fetched scenario. It's a reality many of us will face if we ever have to bug in during a crisis. Today we're diving deep into something most prepping channels don't talk about enough: the people living right next door to you. Before we get into it, take a second right now to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. The community we're building here isn't just about gear and supplies. It's about the knowledge that keeps you one step ahead when others are scrambling. Your neighbors aren't just background characters in your life. When SHTF, they become either your biggest vulnerability or your strongest asset. There's no middle ground. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear strategy for turning what could be your greatest threat into a powerful alliance that multiplies your chances of making it through whatever comes our way. Let's be real. In a crisis, your fancy locks, cameras, and security systems are only part of the equation. The human element right outside your door is what you're not planning for, and it could cost you everything. When we talk about bugging in, most preppers focus on what's inside their four walls: food, water, security measures, medical supplies. But there's something unavoidable just a few feet away: your neighbors. These people see your patterns, notice your deliveries, hear your conversations, and watch your kids play. They're closer to your preps than most of your extended family. Think about it. How many times has a neighbor commented on a package delivery? "Another Amazon box, huh? You must really like shopping online." Little do they know it's another case of freeze-dried food or water filters. Or maybe they've noticed your growing garden, solar panels, or the fact that your trash never seems to contain takeout containers or processed food packaging. These observations build a profile of you in their minds, and in a crisis, that mental profile transforms from casual curiosity into valuable intelligence. Suddenly, your neighbor doesn't just see you as the friendly guy next door who waves hello. You become a potential resource when their family is hungry, cold, or scared. The truth is, you'll encounter different types of neighbors when society starts breaking down. The desperate ones, completely unprepared, panicking and looking anywhere for help. The curious, watching from their windows, assessing which houses might have supplies. The aggressive, those who feel entitled to whatever you have or are willing to take it. The capable, people who have their own preparations but might not reveal them. And perhaps most valuable, the aligned. Those who share your mindset and could become powerful allies. Each type requires a different approach, and misidentifying them could be catastrophic. That family that always seems so nice, desperation changes people. The quiet veteran down the street who keeps to himself, he might have skills that could save your life. Understanding this human landscape is just as important as mapping out your supplies or escape routes. Remember that in a crisis, proximity equals inevitable interaction. You can't ignore your neighbors forever when you're all stuck in place during a prolonged emergency. Eventually, paths will cross, decisions will need to be made, and your prior planning about these relationships could determine whether you're building a stronger community or defending against people who know too much about what you have inside. They know you've prepped. Maybe not everything, but enough. That casual comment about having extra food just in case, the solar panels on your roof, or the gardening supplies stacked in your garage, it all tells a story. And when desperation sets in, that story makes you a target. Let's talk about exposure. Most preppers don't realize how many breadcrumbs they've dropped over the years. Think about the conversations you've had at neighborhood barbecues or community meetings. Perhaps you mentioned storing extra water because of that one storm last year. Maybe you talked about your interest in self-sufficiency, or made a comment about having backup power. It's not just what you've said, it's what they've seen. Bulk deliveries that neighbors notice. The extra garbage after organizing your stockpile. The garden that's bigger than anyone else's on the block. The solar panels or generator you've installed. Even the fact that you're always the one with tools and supplies when something goes wrong. These observations add up. Your kids might be your biggest security leak without even realizing it. Children talk at school or during play dates. My dad has a special room in the basement with lots of food. My mom taught me how to filter water last weekend. Innocent comments that sketch a picture of your preparation level to others. When crisis hits, these memories surface. Your neighbors don't need to know exactly what you have, just that you have more than they do. And that's when friendly faces can transform into threats. The neighbor who always borrowed tools might now feel entitled to your food. The family whose kids play with yours might use emotional leverage. You're not going to let our children go hungry, are you? Desperation drives people to actions they'd never consider under normal circumstances. That's why the unprepared neighbor becomes dangerous, not because they're bad people, but because survival instincts override social norms. And if word spreads beyond your immediate neighbors, you face an even greater risk, becoming known as the prepared house in the area. Consider how information travels in a neighborhood. One neighbor mentions to another that you seem to have supplies. That person tells someone else who's desperate. Soon, you're facing not just one request for help, but an overwhelming wave of people, some asking, some demanding, some willing to take by force if necessary. Even more concerning are the long-term risks of exposure. Government agencies might be conducting sweeps for supplies during severe shortages. Neighbors who resent being turned away could become informants. People might watch your home to identify patterns, looking for vulnerabilities. Once your OPSEC is compromised, it's nearly impossible to restore it. And here's something most preppers don't consider: the emotional toll of turning away people you know, the mother whose children you've watched grow up, the elderly couple who always brought you holiday cookies. These aren't faceless strangers. They're people with whom you have history. Saying no comes with both tactical and psychological consequences that can haunt you long after the immediate crisis passes. That retired mechanic next door? He could keep your generator running when parts are impossible to find. The nurse down the street? She might save your life when hospitals are overrun. Your neighbors aren't just potential threats. They're walking skill sets that could be the difference between surviving and thriving. Now let's flip the script and look at the incredible potential that surrounds you. Every neighborhood contains a wealth of knowledge, skills, and resources that no single prepper could accumulate alone. The key is identifying who can be an asset and how to build those relationships before you need them. Consider the different types of valuable neighbors. There's the former military or law enforcement professional who understands security protocols and has training most civilians lack. The tradespeople, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, mechanics, who can maintain and repair critical systems when professional services aren't available. Retired folks often have practical skills from an era before convenience and disposable goods. Plus, they tend to keep stable routines that make them reliable allies. Don't overlook younger adults either. They might lack experience, but often have physical strength, adaptability, and a willingness to learn in exchange for security and guidance. And resourceful families who already practice some level of self-sufficiency could bring complementary skills to the table. Perhaps they're expert gardeners while you focus on security, creating natural opportunities for mutual benefit. Building a micro-network of trusted neighbors creates what military strategists call a force multiplier. Suddenly, instead of one person or family trying to maintain 24/7 security, you have a rotation of watchful eyes. You gain outside intelligence about what's happening beyond your immediate property. You create opportunities for discreet bartering without drawing unwanted attention from those outside your circle. There's also the psychological advantage. Humans are social creatures, and isolation during crisis accelerates mental health challenges. Having trusted people to interact with provides emotional resilience that's just as important as physical preparations. The ability to share the burden of decisions, to problem solve collectively, and to simply have moments of normal human connection can prevent the kind of burnout and depression that impairs judgment. Division of labor becomes critical during extended emergencies. One person might have medical knowledge, another might be efficient at food preparation, while someone else manages waste disposal or water purification. This specialization means everyone doesn't need to be expert at everything. You create a more capable and efficient community than any individual could achieve alone. Some of the most valuable neighbors are those who prep in plain sight, the quiet community builders who focus on skills and relationships rather than stockpiles. They might lead neighborhood watch programs, organize block parties, or start community gardens without ever using prepper terminology. These people understand something fundamental. True resilience comes through community ties, not just individual readiness. Remember, too, that your neighbors are watching you just as you're watching them. Those who notice your preparedness mindset without you explicitly stating it might be thinking along similar lines. And in a crisis, having neighbors who can vouch for you to others reduces suspicion and provides a buffer against those who might target the loner house that doesn't engage with anyone. Working with neighbors is like any strategic decision. There's upside and downside, and you need to go in with your eyes wide open. But here's the truth. In almost every historical collapse scenario, those who built trusted networks survived longer than lone wolves. Let's break down the real advantages and risks of neighbor cooperation during a crisis. On the positive side, you gain shared defense and intelligence. Multiple people can maintain security rotations without exhaustion. You have eyes and ears beyond your property line, providing early warning of approaching threats or information about resources. The emotional and mental support can't be overstated. Having people to talk to, problem solve with, and share the psychological burden of a crisis provides resilience that no amount of physical preps can replace. Humans simply function better with trusted social connections, especially during high-stress situations. Division of labor prevents burnout and allows specialization. Instead of each household trying to master every survival skill, different people can focus on their strengths: medical care, food production, security, mechanical repairs, creating a more efficient and effective community. Your neighbors might bring complementary skills or gear that fill gaps in your own preparations. Perhaps you focused on food storage while they invested in communications equipment. Maybe you have medical knowledge while they have practical construction experience. These complementary preparations make everyone stronger. A visible presence of multiple cooperative households can actually deter opportunistic threats. Potential troublemakers are less likely to target a property that clearly has multiple adults working together than an isolated home, regardless of its physical security measures. But we need to be honest about the downsides too. The risk of betrayal or manipulation is real. People you trust could reveal information about your preparations to others, or might prioritize outside relationships over your group security under pressure. There's the concern that neighbors might bring additional people later, family members, friends, stretching resources or changing group dynamics. What starts as helping one family could evolve into supporting an ever-growing network beyond your capacity. Dependency issues can develop. Neighbors who bring less to the table might come to expect ongoing support without contributing equally. Resentment can build on both sides if expectations aren't clearly established from the beginning. Perhaps most significant is the irreversibility of trust. Once you've revealed your preparations or capabilities to others, you can't take that information back. If relationships deteriorate, that knowledge remains with them, potentially becoming a vulnerability. The information spread is another consideration. Even well-intentioned neighbors might accidentally share details about your situation with others, creating security risks beyond your control. Each person who knows about your preparations represents a potential information leak, regardless of their intentions. This isn't about painting a pessimistic picture, it's about making informed decisions. Many preppers instinctively lean toward isolation, but historical evidence suggests that balanced cooperation often provides better outcomes than going it alone. The key is structuring these relationships thoughtfully rather than reactively during a crisis. Think of your neighborhood as a series of concentric circles with your home at the center. Not everyone belongs in the innermost ring, but pushing everyone to the outer edge leaves you vulnerable in different ways. The right strategy places each neighbor exactly where they belong, not too close, not too far. One effective approach is what I call the three-ring neighbor strategy. Visualize 3 circles around your home. The outer ring contains the way from a distance types, people you're friendly with but don't engage deeply. Keep those relationships light and casual. They don't need to know anything about your preparations. But maintaining basic civility prevents you from standing out as the antisocial house that might have something to hide. The middle ring includes neighbors who might be useful during a crisis, but aren't fully aligned with your preparedness mindset. These are people with valuable skills, resources, or information who you want to keep relatively close without revealing too much. With them, you might share minimal help during a crisis, perhaps some basic knowledge or small resources, while keeping them unclear about the full extent of your preparations. The inner ring contains your trusted few, people who have demonstrated similar values, reliability, and discretion. These might be neighbors with whom you could potentially share gear, plans, or labor during a crisis, but always with clear conditions and boundaries. Even with this inner circle, practice compartmentalization. Nobody needs to know everything about your preparations. Establishing boundaries in advance is critical. Before any crisis happens, develop clear mental rules about what help you're willing to provide and under what conditions. Perhaps you decide on a no handouts policy but are open to work-for-work exchanges. Maybe you prepare a limited supply of charity items, small bags of rice, basic hygiene kits, or soup mix that can be given without revealing or depleting your main stockpile. The key is having these boundaries firmly established in your mind before emotional situations arise. It's much harder to think clearly about these decisions when someone's standing at your door with hungry children. Having predetermined limits helps you respond consistently and confidently. Learning to read people is an essential prepper skill that few discuss. Watch how potential allies handle stress in everyday situations. Do they panic over minor inconveniences or maintain composure? Notice the gap between their talk and their actions. Many people talk about being prepared or self-sufficient but take no concrete steps in that direction. Pay attention to who they associate with. The company people keep often reveals their values and priorities more honestly than their words, and establish baselines for their behavior now before a crisis. Understanding their normal patterns helps you identify when something's changed or when they might be under pressure from others. These observations aren't about being judgmental. They're about making informed decisions about who might strengthen your position during a crisis versus who might become a liability. The time to make these assessments is now, when you can observe people under normal conditions, not when systems are already breaking down. Remember that trust is built incrementally over time. Start with small interactions that reveal character and capabilities without exposing your full preparations. The neighbor who returns borrowed tools promptly, keeps confidences, or helps without being asked during minor emergencies is showing you valuable information about how they might behave when the stakes are higher. Being the gray man doesn't mean being invisible. It means being forgettable in the right ways and memorable in the ways that serve you. Your neighbors should see you as dependable but not unusual, helpful but not a pushover, friendly but not revealing. The ideal approach is to be the gray man who's also a good neighbor. This means blending in with normal social expectations while not drawing attention to your prepper mindset. You don't want to be known as the survival guy or the doomsday family, but rather as reliable, level-headed people who others naturally turn to during minor emergencies. Participate in appropriate neighborhood activities without oversharing. Volunteering for neighborhood watch, helping with snow removal, or participating in community cleanups builds goodwill and relationships without exposing your preparations. These activities also give you natural opportunities to observe potential allies and threats under slightly elevated stress conditions. Create subtle vetting opportunities to assess neighbors without alerting them to your assessment. Casual conversations can reveal volumes. Man, that storm last year when the power was out for 2 days was rough. What did you guys do to get by? Their answer tells you about their preparedness level, ingenuity, and attitude toward hardship. Look for small collaboration opportunities that test reliability and compatibility. Perhaps you mention having extra vegetable seedlings from your garden and see who's interested in growing food. Maybe you bring up a local news story about water quality and note that you use a simple filter at home, gauging their reaction to basic preparedness concepts. Observe how they respond to minor shortages or inconveniences. When the grocery store runs out of something basic or a brief power outage occurs, who panics and who adapts? These everyday disruptions are windows into how people might behave during more significant events. Building mini alliances starts with small exchanges. I've got extra firewood this year. Would you be interested in trading for some of those amazing tomatoes you grow? These transactions establish patterns of mutual benefit without explicitly discussing preparedness. They create relationships where reciprocity becomes normal, setting the foundation for potential cooperation during emergencies. Use shared concerns as bonding opportunities. If there's a temporary water main break in your area or a severe weather warning, checking in with neighbors creates natural moments to build trust. Just wanted to make sure you heard about the boil water advisory. We've got our filter running if you need clean water. These gestures position you as a resource without revealing the full extent of your preparations. Time is the best test of potential allies. Start small, observe carefully, and gradually increase engagement with those who demonstrate reliability, discretion, and reciprocity. This isn't about creating immediate deep relationships with everyone around you. It's about identifying the few who might become critical connections during difficult times. Be particularly attentive to neighbors who ask thoughtful questions rather than just talking about themselves. People who notice details, remember what you've told them, and demonstrate curiosity about practical matters often make better crisis partners than those focused on status or appearances. Remember that everything you do now is setting the tone for future interactions. If you establish yourself as someone who helps, but within reasonable boundaries, that precedent becomes easier to maintain during a crisis. If you're known for clear communication and fairness, those qualities will carry weight when tensions rise and resources are scarce. When society fractures, your neighbors become either the first line in your defense or the first crack in your security. The difference isn't determined in the moment of crisis, it's decided by the groundwork you lay right now, in the quiet before the storm. Throughout this video, we've explored the complex reality that most preppers don't want to face. Complete isolation isn't sustainable or optimal during a prolonged crisis. Your neighbors represent both your greatest vulnerability and your greatest potential asset. The outcome depends largely on decisions you make well before any emergency occurs. We've seen how neighbors can become threats, through their knowledge of your preparations, desperation during crisis, or by spreading information that makes you a target. But we've also examined how the right neighbors can transform your chances of survival through complementary skills, shared security, and the critical psychological benefits of trusted human connection. The strategies we've covered, from the three-ring approach to boundary setting, from reading people to building incremental trust, all serve a single purpose: to flip the odds in your favor. To transform what could be your greatest risk into your strongest advantage. This isn't just theoretical. Throughout history, from economic collapses to natural disasters, the communities that fare best are neither completely closed nor naively open. They're selective, strategic networks of people who recognize their interdependence while maintaining appropriate boundaries and security. Take action now. Start mapping your neighborhood's human terrain just as carefully as you inventory your supplies. Begin identifying potential allies, setting appropriate boundaries, and building the right kinds of relationships before you need them. Create protocols for how you'll handle requests for help when the time comes. Remember that preparation isn't just about what you have. It's about who you know and how you've positioned yourself within your immediate community. The right neighbor relationships multiply your resources and capabilities in ways no amount of individual stockpiling can match. Before you go, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on neighbor strategies. What's worked for you? What challenges have you faced? The community we're building here is part of our collective preparation. Your neighbors aren't just the people who live near you. They're variables in your survival equation. Manage those variables wisely, and you won't just survive whatever comes our way. You'll rebuild something worth preserving when the dust finally settles.